Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
SoundCartel.
In the world of fashion and music, often what's old is new again. In professional services like law, what's old is largely still old, but there are people making modern efforts to change a very conventional vocation. From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. You may not be a lawyer yourself, but if not, you would definitely have a lawyer in your life somewhere. So, how do you view them? Are they the traditional type working on the billable hour? Or do they present a fresher, more flexible approach in doing business with you? Because believe it or not, in this most traditional of professions, a power shift is on. And that's where Lucy Dickens comes in. Lucy is a lawyer, but she became interested in not just the practice of law, but the business of law as well. These days, she advises other lawyers. She's a speaker, lecturer, podcaster, and a staunch advocate of professional change. And she's now written a book titled It's Time to Do Law Differently. Lucy explains why to Heather Dawson.
There are many reasons. One, or I guess the starting point, is the change in the legal services market. There's been a shift over the last few years from what was traditionally a seller's market to a buyer's market, where now the power is in the hands of the consumer, whereas previously it wasn't, which meant that lawyers and law firms could basically do business as they pleased, and the consumer had no choice but to, if they wanted to engage a lawyer, they had to do it on their terms. Whereas now we've got, new technology. We're in the information age where clients can Google their legal problem before they even engage us, and they've got so much more information at their hands, which really shifts the power.
But given that, why have some, or maybe many law firms, been so slow to bring themselves into the 21st century, Lucy? Because do they find it so hard to change traditional practice?
Yes, I think change is hard in any industry, isn't it? I mean, there's whole careers dedicated to change management. But I think the saying goes, it's hard to convince a room full of millionaires that their business model is broken. And I think that really rings true in law, where we've got partners in firms who, at least on a financial level, are successful. It's not easy to tell them that what they're doing is wrong and that they should be doing things in a different way. So that's definitely part of it. But also, I think going back to education, or what a concept that has or is starting to become spoken about as lawyer formation, particularly by Jordan Furlong, who's a thought leader here. Lawyers aren't taught some of those essential skills, business skills, people skills, operation skills, about improving processes and business efficiency. And so they just do things the way they've always been done.
But going back to that question of finance and fees and so on, I guess many younger lawyers have to work hard to work up the ladder, not being paid so well. So when they get up the ladder, they want to hold on to all that hard work that they've left behind them.
Yeah, definitely. There is some of that. I had to do it this way. I had to work my way up. I had to bill a ridiculous number of hours a day. So other juniors who are now coming through the ranks, well, you should have to do it that way because I had to do it that way. I don't believe in that, and I don't agree with that. I don't think that's the right approach at all. But you hit the nail on the head when you talk about working hard and selling time. And I mean, that's the thing we haven't spoken about yet, is the billable hour, which really is at the heart of, I think, what holds back progression in the legal profession. Because if you're selling time, there's no incentive to be innovative or find ways to do things faster or better or more effectively, because the longer it takes you, the more money you're going to earn. And that was okay. Well, arguable whether that was okay, but let's just say that was okay. Well, there was a market willing to engage you on that basis. But that's the power shift. That's where things are changing.
So, Lucy, what are the biggest changes that you'd like to see introduced?
For me, it really starts with an individual's meaning and purpose in life. I think, at least with the lawyers who I see and who I speak to and who I work with, so many of them start their business because they want freedom or flexibility, or they want to do things in a different way to the traditional, to the norm. But once they actually get started, they find it's really easier to do things the way they've always been done, that they don't actually get that flexibility that they were craving in the first place, and that rather than running the business in the way that they thought. They find that their business runs them because they just feel so tied to it. And so for me, in the work I do with the people who I speak to, it's about going back to the beginning there and working out, actually, what do you want this business to look like, and how does that fit into your life in the bigger picture sense? Because it's no secret that law as a profession, people who work within the law have, they work very, very long hours in high pressure and stressful jobs. And I think we're seeing a shift away from that. Not to say we can completely eliminate the stress. I mean, it's an important job that affects people's lives. And I'm not trying to undercut that, but I think the way in which we run our businesses, that can be changed to make them more meaningful and purposeful.
So if those sorts of changes were introduced into a legal firm, what would be the results of that from an internal point of view, do you think?
Well, from the perspective of the business owner, and I suppose this doesn't just apply to law, this applies to any business. It's about starting at the beginning, the foundations, and really working out what's the vision for the business. Really, the core of it is a more enjoyable business, a more enjoyable life, because you're spending time doing the things that you enjoy doing. And so as part of this kind of redesign process that I talk about, I'm talking about looking at the way you deliver services, what you sell, who you work for, looking for efficiencies within the back end of the business so that you can really automate a lot of the what I call grunt work, which is like the day-to-day kind of routine tasks that don't really require a lot of brain power, but somebody has to do them. And by doing that, you can free up your time to work on the things that you enjoy, the things that really do require your brain power, the things that actually make a difference rather than, the paper pushing type work that, yes, like I said, needs to be done, but you don't really want to feel like you're beholden to that.
So a better lifestyle, more enjoyable work, without necessarily forfeiting the money that you've put all those years of hard work into achieving before you get to that point.
Yeah, absolutely not. And the framework that I talk about in my book is called Productize and Profit. And I talk about this idea of, lifestyle, like you say, and meaning and purpose. But that's not to say that that's at the expense of profit. A big part of my book and my work is about redesigning services to make them more client-centric. So it starts with, what do you want your life to look like? What's your vision? And then it goes straight into, well, who are you actually helping? And what are their needs and their problems? And how can you design your services in a way that suits them? And by doing that, by really putting your clients at the core of the service that you're offering, the profit part just comes because you're offering a service that people want. And that is still unique in the legal profession.
It doesn't necessarily just apply to the legal profession either, does it? Because other professional services, accountants and so on, could also relook at their business practice as well.
Absolutely, definitely. And accountants are a good example. I have a podcast, Doing Law Differently, which is about doing law differently, believe it or not. It's all about business model change. And I know that lots of other professions also listen to that podcast, because while I'm speaking to lawyers, the concepts apply to businesses generally. It's not, the legal profession is not special in this sense. We're talking about business concepts that they apply to any business.
Now, from the client's perspective, on the other hand, what are the big benefits of remodelling these professional services firms?
Well, definitely the more client-centric approach means that they're going to receive or consume services in a way that they want to consume them, actually helping them solve their problems. A big part of it is around access to justice, and a lot of the people who I speak to are really, that is their driver, is they recognise this barrier to accessing the legal system. And so redesigning services, so productising as opposed to selling time, all of those types of things enable for a better customer experience and help people solve the problem in a more effective way. But the access to justice is a really big one.
Are there certain questions that you'd like to see clients asking their lawyers and law firms now?
If they're not already, which I hope they would be, but I think that there are still a lot of firms who are not doing this. So if your lawyer is not offering you a fixed fee scoped quote for a service that you're about to engage them for, that's got to be the starting point. Because the core of this change is really about the billable hour. And once we can move past that and change that way of thinking, there's a ripple effect into all sorts of other areas of business, whether it's customer experience, even management of staff, because the way we measure and review performance starts to change when we're not looking at how much time someone's billing. So from a client's perspective, I think if they're asking their lawyers for a fixed fee quote and scope of works before an engagement begins, that's not only going to benefit them because they know exactly what they're getting and what they're going to have to pay for that, but that's also going to trigger so many of these other changes within law firms when the consumer puts this demand on them.
That was Lucy Dickens, legal innovator and author of It's Time to Do Law Differently. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow at BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.